And welcome to another episode of Faith, Family, and Finance. We are so glad that you have taken time out of your busy schedule to join us on this evening. We're glad that some of you are still awake. I know with this time change at 7 o'clock, I feel sleepy. And I think that it is, and our kids even think that it's time to go to bed. Well, for them, it is time to go to bed. But it just gets dark so much earlier, and it's messing with me. I feel like I should have been asleep three hours ago.
There's an adjustment that has to take place. That's all. Just a little adjustment.
So thank you, everyone. Just like I said, for taking time out of your schedule to have this conversation with us tonight. If you follow us, you know that on tonight we are talking about giving. We're talking about giving and giving during the pandemic. Are people still giving? To give or not to give? That is the question. And
Definitely.
oh, and some will say to tithe or not to tithe. That is the question. Hello, I see my mother is joining us. Thank you, Mom, for tuning in. And others of you, as you come in, please just tell us hello. We'd love to know, if especially if you're first time, where you're watching, where you're located. But we want to talk about giving tonight. And Marcus, when we were having the conversation, I think even last week, we didn't come on last week, but we were talking about the topics and the lineups for the next couple of weeks. And we were talking, the way he phrased it was tithing, to tithe or not to tithe.
Or not to tithe.
And I said, I think when we say tithe or not to tithe, we're definitely appealing to a certain audience or a certain demographic.
People, right?
We're excluding people. Thank you. That's exactly what I was looking for. We're excluding people because we realize that everybody who watch may not be connected or affiliated with the church. Everyone may not tithe, but everyone can give. Everyone gives. Now if we were doing this on a different platform, we are on Robinson Coaches, right? And not Mt.Olive on the Hill. If we were doing this on a different platform, on a church platform, then we would ask the question to tithe or not to tithe. So, but tonight we'll probably vacillate back and forth between giving, tithing, but just, get in where you fit in. The overall premise is, do we give or we not give? Hey, Teresa, thank you for joining us during this time. And so some of the data and some of the information that I have, we are going to look at churches and do you give, what some of the data is saying about churches, but we'll look at nonprofits and overall charities as well. I don't know why. I know I have better sense than this, but I started this thing with this gum in my mouth. And you just let me start with this gum in my mouth.
It was amazing. How you going to blame me for your actions?
Oh my gosh, y'all, please forgive me. I'm struggling right now. So go ahead, Marcus. Take over.
Get your inner country on.
Just go ahead.
You know you want to take it out.
Go ahead. I'm about to take it out. Just go ahead.
So, to give or not to give, that is the question. If you talk to some, you're going to say, some would say, okay, we have no jobs or our jobs have laid us off. We don't have that much income. So how is it that we give during such an uncertain time? Because, the reality is when this whole COVID thing started, they said that it'd be over in about 6 months.
Yeah, we thought that. I don't know if anybody, somebody.
That's what they said.
Okay, I don't know who they. I don't know who they. Okay.
They said, the news, they were projecting that we would be done by the summer. And apparently churches were thinking the same thing because we were thinking that we were going to be back in church, back to doing business as usual by the end of the summer. And some people had a strategic plan that was 6 months or so, right? Didn't happen that way.
Right.
We're in the second wave of this thing, and the question is, how do we operate? So nonprofits, to include churches, or whoever's used to getting money and basing their whole business model on people giving, grossly being affected. Would you say?
Oh yes.
Grossly.
We are, and now the only thing we can say is we don't know when this is going to end. We don't know when. Various ones of us are making our projections, our predictions, but we don't know. We don't know when this thing is going to end.
At all.
So, I need those of you who are on tonight to go ahead and answer this question for us. Answer our poll questions. I see Regina. Thank you for joining. Regina and I went to high school together, graduated together. I see James Collins, faithful
James
watcher.
Collins.
Hamilton. We just got finished looking at pictures of our adorable godson who turned 6 months old today. Shout out to Little Ham on the broadcast tonight. And so do we give? Do we not give? Do we give? Do we not give? Of course, I can't do this without going to the scripture. Not going to go right now. But do we give or do we not give? Hamilton is weighing in early.
Yeah.
Wow. Go ahead, Marcus.
He says Hamilton says if you budget appropriately, giving is easier. All contributions, especially to nonprofits, are substantial. Now, and he's right. The reality is, nobody likes the B word though. Budget.
I know what you mean.
No, we didn't like the B word before
I know
COVID.
what you mean.
The reality is, I don't really like it. I usually choose the phrase, spending plan.
Yeah.
That works for me, even though it is a budget at the end of the day.
I like
but the reality is, you're right. These gifts are substantial for nonprofits and churches.
Right. Teresa said, and Teresa's a pastor, so of course Teresa says, yes, we give. We continue to give. Most of us on here, we connect to our faith communities with our jobs, whether we're in education, whether we're in whatever sector we're in. You work for the faith community. We know that giving is critical, and especially during this time of year. So we're in the time of thanks and Thanksgiving. And people are collecting donation drives for turkeys and food baskets and things of that nature. And I have heard individuals who were about my age and younger, and you let me know if you resonate with this, but individuals who are a little bit younger, they will say things like, if I know that I'm giving to a particular cause, and let me go to church for a minute, I'm more likely... Oh, I like that right there, but okay. I'm more likely to give to a church. I'm more likely to give to a church than not give if I know that I'm giving to a particular cause. So, example, if we know that during this time we're already a church or a congregation, and the churches that I see that are connected here, we operate in outreach. We practice outreach. We try to give to the community, do something in some shape, form, or fashion. People are more likely, if you put out a giving campaign to say, help us give 500 turkeys to the community or gift cards to the community, they're more likely to give to that specific campaign than if you stand and say, can you join me in giving a $100 offering on today? Because I think still in the back of people's mind, there's still this suspicion when it comes to not just churches, but nonprofits and where their money's going, and if their money is really going to reach the people directly. Right. Because even with nonprofits, a lot of times when you apply for different funding entities, they won't just pay your general operating costs. Right. But if you say we're doing, having funding for, we want to get money for a computer lab, so that our kids can use computer, or our kids can have high-speed internet. You just went through something like that with your chapter. With your fraternity on Make It South High Fraternity Incorporated. People will give to something that they know they can hook their head on, attach their money to, as opposed to them thinking, oh, I'm just giving to pay your salary, or I'm just giving to pay your light bill. I got my own light bill. I don't want to give to pay your light bill. And so many of you are saying, yes, you'll continue to give. Are you more likely to give if you know you're giving to a cause? Or if you're just giving to the overall fund and you trust that entity in which you're giving to do the right thing with it?
So so you mentioned...
I brought up a lot of stuff.
Well, yeah. Well, you mentioned church, because it's easy to vacillate between other nonprofits and church. And they're the same in the eyes of some, but in the eyes of God, they're not. So as far as church goes, and we have a few folks here who represent church, it sounds as if people don't trust the process. So, for instance, if you've been in church anytime, you've heard a certain scripture in Malachi, right? It talks about the tithe. The interesting thing about it is God has a process and a way of funding the kingdom. We fight that. Do you believe that is a maturity issue on the body of Christ, an accountability issue, as Hamilton pointed out. What's the hang up? Because as you just stated, we'll give to something that we can see, and we say we have great faith in this God that we can't see. So, where's our faith?
Where's our faith? I hear you.
And this type of stuff sometimes breed more questions than answers.
It does sometimes.
But
yeah, where is it? But you have to go all the way back even to looking in the Old Testament and how they used the tithes and what the tithes and what the money was used for. Like you said, and I said all the way as if you weren't just in the Old Testament, but I meant to Leviticus. Sorry. I had a moment.
I didn't say that.
I had a moment. But when you talk about what the tithes were used for and how it was used to take care of the people who were working, because in that instance, though, they didn't have any other jobs. Right. That's what they had to do. Right. When you look at all of the 12 tribes and what they were able to do, the Levites, the priests, they were not able to go out and do the other things and work the fields. Everybody had to bring a portion of what they brought, of what they made, into the temple, so that those who were called to work in the temple could be taken care of. Now, we just going down the road of Bible study. I promise y'all, we talking in general, but from what I can see, most of the people on this live right now are believers anyway. So we just gonna vacillate back and forth between this church and this nonprofit world. But
it is what it is.
And many people are saying that they give to a specific cause. But I want to point out something Shatavius, another great Wantonian, has stated.
What?
We graduated from high school together.
Superheroes?
I want to point out something. And I thought about this before we got on. When we talk about the tithe, and you talk about tithe, or you talk about giving, I know you like going to Malachi. I love Luke 6:38. I know it, but I'm going to read it for you all, and you can just quote it with me. Give, and it shall be what? Given unto you, good measure, pressed down, shaken together, and running over, shall men give into your bosom, for with the same measure in which you meet, wherewithal it shall be measured unto you. So the same measure which you will give, it shall be given unto you. And that doesn't say, or even the tithe, if God has blessed me with the job or with resources, income that is coming in, then I know that came from job, that came from God, not my job. So now I have an obligation to give back. I know. I think I just heard the same thing. I just heard a child. We have never had a child to interrupt our lives. So we're just going to keep talking in the name of Jesus and know that the child that is somewhere down there that hears us is going to
get back
in the bed, because nothing is wrong.
Right. And I don't want to cause a situation.
No, we don't want to cause a situation. Everybody's safe, right? Yes. Okay. All right. Let's carry on. That has never happened before. And
close the door.
How many years have we been doing this? Oh my goodness. But anyway, like I was saying before, I was so
see how quickly you can get distracted.
Rudely interrupted. Yes. Shatavius was making the point. We don't just give or say we're not giving because now we're in a pandemic, or we choose when we give or when we don't give.
Right.
If God has blessed us with the ability to give, to help others, then we have that obligation to do it. Now, there are several people in this that we know who no longer have employment, who have been, James had jokes when he was talking about being between a rock and a hard place, but who are between a rock and a hard place. They don't have any income. Well, of course, if you don't have any income,
there's nothing to tie from.
There's no discussion here, people. Like, there is absolutely no discussion. We are not talking to you. We are not talking about you.
Right.
No pastor, no teacher, no nonprofit leader, person in their right mind will tell you to give from what you don't have. So if they're telling you to give from what you don't have, they're not in their right mind. And you may not want to follow them. I mean, how you going to tell me to write the check in faith and my bank account when it's in the negative? But if you write it, I believe right now, money's going to come to you now.
Don't write me that check.
Don't write that check.
Yeah, don't write that
We're
check.
not doing that. That's not what we're talking about. So if you really don't have it, we're not saying go out and try to figure it out, muster it up. Don't put yourself in a hard place to get it. But what I am saying is whatever comes to your hand, as I always say, every dollar, every dime has an assignment. Whatever comes to your hand, I'm obligated to give a tenth of what comes in my hand
See,
to the kingdom. That's me.
the other thing is, well, is it you or is it biblical? I mean, it's a principle.
It's a principle, but I'm just telling what
And
I do. Yeah,
and the reality is we have to ask this one question. Did God's word change
because of the pandemic.
because of the pandemic?
I know you were gonna say
If
that.
his word changed at some point, y'all let me know.
But Marcus.
Here we the but
Marcus,
gets in the way.
yeah, you know I just got to do this. I got to do this on the side to show the other side because somebody else is thinking and not saying it.
Right.
People don't know when this is going to be over. People have exhausted some of their savings. People have, different things that have come up. Shouldn't I hold on to some of my money anyway? I mean, really, the church and the nonprofits, they're going to be all right. They can apply for funds. They can do all these things. Why do I have to give? Why do I have to continue to give? When I don't know how long this is going to go on or if my job is going to be in jeopardy, so shouldn't I be saving more?
Saving to do what? I'm just saving to do what? I mean,
saving for a
so
rainy
check
day.
this out. If you think about it, the reality is we only truly have a few bills, right? Even if you're in a mound of debt, you gotta have a place to stay, you gotta eat, you gotta have lights, water, right? And you gotta have a way of transportation. Now, whether that's your transportation, public transportation, you gotta be able to move and be mobile, right? Mm-hmm. Okay, so the credit card bill, it is what it is. Okay, ain't nothing gonna happen other than your credit's gonna be wrecked. Okay, now most creditors, not all, but most creditors gave a reprieve during the first 6 to 8 months of this COVID situation. Whether it's mortgage, I'll tell you as a landlord, we couldn't put anybody out for not paying rent, so literally there were several things in place to help the average common person through this pandemic to this point. It did run out, right? The thing that was most devastating is the number of small businesses that didn't have the same help, if you will, that the common person had. And if you know anything about government economics, small businesses really support the whole country and supply jobs to over 70% of the country. So when small businesses start to lose their foothold on how they do what they do, it affects everybody. Okay? So when it comes down to the principle of tithe and when it comes down to the principles that you operate in just as a Christian in this case, we have to have faith enough to understand that we didn't put ourselves in this situation and that we ain't gonna be able to get ourselves out this situation. So it becomes a testing of our faith. And as unpopular as it is, his word was his word before this pandemic. This ain't even the first pandemic. My grandmother was old enough to remember the Depression. I don't see anybody in food lines, right? That's what they did during the Depression. Okay. They were in bread lines. They were in food lines. Okay. Food lines for everybody. Okay. Food lines for everybody. When I mean everybody, we know some centurions. Let's talk to them. I wish we had them on. But the reality is that it's not the same. We're not in a depression. We're not in the Great Depression. And the reality is half the country's overweight. So we can miss a meal.
So Teresa says, I continue to give because I trust God to take care of me in spite of COVID. Yes.
We all do.
I said it before, I said it again. Not everybody. Christ over COVID. For real. Christ over COVID. I trust God. I do trust God. You said we all do. Most people don't continue to give, though. Giving to the nonprofit sector has decreased since we've been in COVID. Now, this is the thing. People who give donations of $250 or less, those donations have increased. And now I'm not on church, I'm just on the nonprofit sector. Those donations have increased substantially, like double digits, like 23%. People who
those
$250 or less.
Okay.
So more of us who probably were not philanthropists pre-COVID, if there was a charity or there was a movement and someone asked us to give, up to that $250 mark, more people have given during COVID. So you have some philanthropists that have grown out of this season. But once you get to those who will give over $1,000, that overall amount of people who will give over that amount has decreased. It has decreased by about 13%. And so more people are giving small amounts, but the big donors, those who will give more amount, they're not giving as much. That giving has decreased.
Wow.
That giving has decreased. And so, it is decreased. And even in churches, giving in churches has decreased. Now, there are a lot of reasons why giving in churches has decreased. But for a lot of people who, from March until something about July, August, who were out of their church, because a lot of people have gone back into their buildings.
Right.
But for people who were out of their buildings early March until whenever they went back in, people did not have an online giving platform.
Because they never needed
the majority of people, the majority of churches did not have, and the majority of members did not have an online giving platform. If the majority, if the younger population were leaving the church in droves, and our churches were filled with older individuals are not giving their tithes and offerings on PayPal or Cash App.
They write checks.
They write checks.
Yeah.
Or they get their cash. Yeah. And so the giving went down in those churches tremendously. And then churches started realizing, well, we need to at least open the doors once a week so people can drive by and drop off their gifts.
Right.
And people started doing that for places where they didn't mail their gifts. But giving has decreased. But we're in this season. So will we see an increase? Typically, and I think Hammer can speak to this, because I remember my first year of being a pastor, I remember he told me from generally November, December, and I even saw it a little bit in January, people are very generous and people give. People give a lot in November, December, even in their tithes and their offering, maybe because they get bonuses from their jobs. I don't know if people passing out Christmas bonuses this year. I ain't gonna put you on the spot and ask you if y'all passing out bonuses, but I don't know if if bonuses from their jobs or increase or whatever, or corporations have that end of year quota that they need to meet because they still need to be able to write off a certain amount. But I know I experience every year as a pastor, I'll see if it happens this year, there was an increase in giving in November and December every year. People just give more this time of year. Will you continue to give? Let's see what y'all talking about. Let's see. There are a lot of comments. Let's work through some of these.
So James, he's a church musician. He said his job is the church, and so he's between a rock and a hard place. I've been there. I understand that. He's saying a lot of churches aren't forthcoming with the whereabouts of the finances taken in from the members. Mm-hmm. I mean, I know churches like that. That's unfortunate.
And it is, and there should be an accountability process. I know Ann Hamilton has used the word accountability a good deal here, or unless that's the same comment that's on the screen. But there really is, I can say for AME Church, there's an accountability process that's in place. But like with every church, you can find a loophole. Like with not just church, even nonprofits, even whatever, people can find a loophole and they can report what they want to report and don't report what they want to report. But I think if there was more transparency and people could see that money was going to ministry more, they would be more likely to give. But I know me, at the end of the day, I was like, you know what? I'm giving it, Lord. I'm giving it. This is before I became a pastor. I'm giving it. If they do something crazy with it, that's on them. But I'm going to give believing that I'm giving on good ground. Now, if I didn't think I was giving on good ground, I wouldn't give in that place.
I'd give somewhere else.
Yeah, I've been in a place where I'm like, I'm not giving here. This is crazy. And so you give somewhere else. It's still my obligation, to my pleasure. Actually, I don't look at it as an obligation per se. It's my pleasure to give. Yeah, my opportunity. That's a good word.
Yeah. And
who else we got?
Think of it this way. What if we got to the point where we were thinking, okay, God has gifted us or given us something, and we just literally giving back to Him what's His.
That's exactly.
And so it's it's interesting how we literally hoard what we don't even own. So it's kind of like when I say, when you're just saying savings, when people would want to save in the midst of a pandemic, it's like I get it because you don't know, it's the uncertainty. You know, we've stepped up our savings a little bit just because it's the uncertainty. But at the same time, I can't compromise what got us to this place either. You know, the reality is none of us we've done better. We've done better than what we've come from, and so for us, it becomes a faith issue of how do we do that? Well,
Right.
we believe that tithing was a part of that.
Right. Right. This lady, Miss Brown, says, "Look,
Dr. Willie Mae Brown.
where is our faith? We have to believe every promise of God, which is yes and amen. Amen, Mama. Yes. But my God shall supply all of our needs according to His riches and glory." Philippians 4:19. And this is true. We do have to operate in a great level of faith. We have to make sure that we're walking by faith and not by sight. Let me tell you, Marcus spoke to our spending, and Hamilton had mentioned something about our spending plan. I have had people who said to me, you know what, I would normally be taking my clothes to the dry cleaners, getting them cleaned. I would normally be getting my nails done, my toes done, but I'm not getting those things done. So here, let me write you a check to the organization, or let me write you a check to the church. Because these are people who are still tithing or giving to their own churches, but they're also increasing that whole philanthropic giving, like I was talking about before. It's not, maybe it's not over $250, but they're saying, I haven't gotten my nails done in 3 months, or I don't go out to eat every day anymore because I'm working from home and I'm not working in the office, so I can go downstairs or go in the other room and make, go in the kitchen and make lunch and not have to worry about ordering lunch every day. And so people are giving. I mean, even though the numbers are showing that giving is slightly down all around, there are people who are still giving. And I just want to encourage us to be those people who during this season, when I'm going to tell you, Marcus mentioned these organizations. I mean, I see some of the nonprofit organizations, the IRS, like everybody else, they were shut down for a long time during the pandemic. They're back now, but people losing nonprofit status because they were supposed to waive some type of the stipulation, give people an extra 2 months because people were out for COVID, so they couldn't file the things that they need to file on time, and right. But somebody didn't communicate that to the computer system. So there are like all kind of glitches that are going on, funding hangups, so many things that's going on. These agencies, they didn't get the bulk of the money that was out there. Not the nonprofits. They didn't. And a lot of churches were either scared to apply because, you know how we pay. You know how we do in churches. Churches are not, no, I'm serious. No. I'm serious. It's something that needs to be addressed. Yeah. Churches were not in the position. They realized when this thing came out that their structure was not such that they were really in the position because they couldn't pull together the paperwork. I know lots of churches who got money, lots of churches who applied and got money, but I know other churches who are like, you know what? No, we operate in that because that's the government. I don't want the government in my business. I don't want the government to come back
because we don't know what happened prior.
We don't know. Yeah. And so, especially if you're part of a larger system, you just don't know. And you have to maybe clean up stuff that was going on before you. Right. And, when the money came out, the application window was not a long window. So you got to have everything together. But we didn't get this money. And so now churches and nonprofit organizations are relying on people being generous, being givers, doing what the Bible has called us to do. I think it's so interesting when we start talking about giving, the way we approach it, it's not from a, look, I ain't begging you. This is what God has called you to do. Do it or not do it. You can't just say that on Sunday morning. Right, Pastor Teresa?
That's why I'm not a pastor.
Right, Pastor Teresa? You can't just say that like, look, I don't care, give if you want to give. I don't care because
but I'm married to one
this was God has called you. I would not say that to people. I would not say that to people. I would not say that to people.
But you know what? Hamilton mentioned the fact that there's an educational gap. And the reality is, we make jokes all the time just because we've been in church forever. But literally, there's an education gap because people don't understand or connect the dots between, if we don't give, what are we teaching the next generation? So think about this. Your grandparents, they gave sometimes out of necessity because that's what it was. That was community. It was a community thing. They wanted the community to be better, so everybody did their quote unquote part. We saw that coming up to a certain degree. If we don't keep that tradition alive, especially in our community will really perish even more than is already perishing because we don't. Jesse Jackson said it. Look, if America catches a cold, Black America catches the flu.
Amen.
Now you got COVID on top of that.
Y'all type that.
So
Amen.
literally, we don't have the same luxuries and options that other communities have as far as giving and making sure that our community is taken care of. What was interesting to me, coming from not growing up in a rural area necessarily, what was interesting to me is when I went to a rural area going to college, I never saw homelessness like I saw in the city. And I always wondered, where are the homeless? And I'm like, these people can't have money like that. So, I mean, they're not in the woods. Where are they? And how is it that they can take care of their homeless in, 30 miles from a city, but in the city, we can't seem to do that. And I got to say something to certain folks at my office every other day, trespassing. It's something broken, and I don't want to know if I'm like, country people take care of their people better than city people.
Hey, those of you who grew up in rural areas, do we take care of our own?
What is it, the Warrentonians?
I said Warrentonians. I mean, do we take care of our own? That's a good question. Because, I mean, growing up in Norwood, Georgia, you're right. I would never see anybody. Well, one, there was no bridge for me to see people sitting under. But I would never see people at the traffic light. Wait, there is no traffic light for me to see people sitting. No, they did get one. I would never see people at the light. Right, y'all? Come on. Y'all still long. Stop.
I got a story for the first time I went to Norwood.
Can we
Georgia?
focus? Can we focus?
All right, okay.
I would never see people sitting at the traffic light with the bucket asking for money. I mean, it's not to say that people didn't ask for money, not to say people didn't walk the street and do whatever, but you knew those people who walked the street. And at night, we knew that person had somewhere to go. And then when I left there and I went to Atlanta to school, I about passed out when I saw people sitting up on the bridge on Ashley Street and James P. Brawley Drive and right there, Clark Atlanta, right there in the West End. And you would just see people gather. And I'm like, what's going on? Yeah. What are they doing? What are they doing? Union. See, we got somebody else, Teresa from Union, South Carolina. Nope, you didn't see people. You didn't see that. And I don't know what the issue is. I mean, we take care of our own, but maybe people move from those areas to cities thinking that they can make it and they don't have that sense of community. Talking about community is definitely another whole live. Just a sense of community and really being our brother's keeper and really loving our neighbor as we love ourselves. But we have to figure out how to get more of us to not be afraid during COVID, to not think we have to go and hide our money under our mattress during COVID. Now, I do believe during this season, I am a proponent of having more cash on hand than I've ever been. Like, I've never wanted to have cash on hand. I just didn't live that way. But now, it's just because there is uncertainty, but it hasn't caused me to not give. I feel like I've been able to give more.
And it becomes a priority thing, too. It becomes a belief and a priority thing. I guess the thing that hit home with me was having 3 sons. I'm like, what do we teach our young men about giving? Okay. Because there's a direct correlation between giving and work. Okay. There's a direct correlation between giving, work, and what we call quote unquote success. Mm-hmm. And so the most successful people I know give. Some of the most unsuccessful people I know are extremely stingy because they believe that people are trying to take from them. And God's principle with tithing has more so to do with him trying to get you to something than him trying to take something from you. Since he owns it.
Right. The most successful people give. The word tells us, Luke, give and it shall be given unto you. What we think, and this is a problem. what we think is that this stuff is just, oh, this is something that's in the Bible, and because it's in the Bible, somebody's telling us we could do it. People who don't even go to church, what they do, they know that this is not just a biblical principle, but these are universal principles. These are universal laws. This is, you put a seed in the ground, you put it on the right ground, what's going to happen? It's going to grow. These are kingdom principles, universal principles, business principles. Call them what you want to call them. But the people who are not sitting on the front row of your church every week or in that room counting the money at the church every Sunday, the people in the world know that if they give, it's going to come back to them. That's why the most successful people you know, or the most successful people you know, they give. It comes back. It comes back every time, y'all. Hamilton mentioned about giving to higher educations, institutions of higher education, talking about what do you teach your boys. That's what you teach your boys, to make sure that they give back in that way. How do they give back? I think I posted something the other day. I don't think my brother is on here. But my youngest brother,
Yeah,
how
he oh, not that one.
not that one. Oh, my youngest brother, and he does this every year. He don't even like when people talk about it, and I think that's the amazing thing, also. But every year he's gonna find some type of way to go back to our alma mater, to go back to our high school and give significantly. Whether he's going and feeding the football team, or this year he fed all the teachers. He did a luncheon for all the teachers for homecoming week. But he always finds a way. Um, always find a way to give to South Carolina State University. Like, you have to always find a way to give, especially to our schools, especially to our HBCUs, because they're in the same situation as many other churches and the nonprofit. They need people to give to them, and we got to show our children. That's why for Christmas, like this holiday season, they have to give. They know that they have to give away some stuff. And don't just give away the used toys that you don't want. Give away something good. We're not just giving away. We're not giving away broken toys. Like, let's go to the store and identify something and find something and give it to somebody else.
And it's interesting because kids, they're so perceptive. You know, I gave away a good number of things a few weeks ago, and one of the boys asked me, "Why are you giving all this stuff away?" And I was like, "Well, number one, it's probably the right thing to do. I need to make room.
Ooh, that's another whole message.
I need to make room.
Make room.
So
make room.
So this is the thing. Anytime anytime there is a pandemic, anytime there's a situation like this that affects the body of Christ, this is the time for us to pivot. This is the opportunity that God is trying to show us, and it's about our perspective. If you can actually get to the point where you change your perspective on COVID and say, what are the opportunities that the body of Christ, or that me personally, has as a result of COVID, then I think that we can hear from God a little bit differently and start to move in something different. This is not a time for us to be afraid. This is a time to address some problems. The situation is before us. We have more time than we've ever had before to deal with it, if you take it. This is the thing. What's amazing to me is everybody's trying to rush back into being busy. But the funny thing is, God shut everything down. And it might happen again. Just because.
Chicago is shut down. It's not a lot of, it may be some other cities, they're going that way, but I just heard on the news, I think this was last week, where they said Chicago is down. They're saying, y'all stay home for Thanksgiving, don't go anywhere. They're going back to phase one.
Yeah.
I heard some people talking today, and they're like, no, we're not going to get back to that. We're not going to shut down. We're not going to get to all virtual schools. We're not doing any of that. You know, and this is right here in South Carolina, and they were adamant, like, we're not shutting down again. But that's, you know, our leadership says we're not shutting down again. That's fine. Yeah. You don't have to.
Some things
there are other ways to shut you down, right? There are other ways to be shut down.
And it is funny because, like, literally, and this is just personally, the reality is, I'm looking at it as, okay, if we have the opportunity to give, you get to participate in the process. So if you look at it as a church thing, and you give a tithe, that's really the lowest level of giving in the kingdom, the tithe. because the Bible also wants us to give an offering.
We can't even get to that.
So we're hung up on the 10%, and I think Sherman talked about what do you do with the 90. You know, the reality is, if we start cleaning up debt, the 90 won't even be an issue because we won't have 70 and 80% of our income being clouded up with debt. So a lot of the stuff, as far as why we try to hold on to money that we didn't print, money that doesn't belong to us, and resources that we can't really control other than what we think we can do, we got to get to the point where we see the bigger picture. And my biggest prayer is to make sure that we continue to pray for our pastors and leaders, because they got to see the big picture. You know, the reality is we have a lot of leaders who are blind. And because we've not necessarily made the main thing, we got caught up in the smoke and mirrors. The smoke and mirrors are everything that doesn't go to the bottom line. So if you look at church, we're caught up in lights, camera, action, when in fact you still have people starving, can't read, and can't count, which means you can't do for yourself. And so in building communities, the first thing you have to do is be able to feed yourself. The first thing you got to be able to do is protect yourself. We don't even own any hospitals yet. Why is it that the Catholic Church understands that they can be self-sufficient? They can have their own police. Christians, we still look to Egypt and the world to feed us, clothe us, give us a hospital, give us drugs, give us some type of medication. Nobody sees any problems with this. We got to pray for our pastors and leaders so that they can begin to really, really see the kingdom. Because if you can't see it, you can't relate it. And unfortunately, we've had the blind leading the blind. And sometimes, to someone's point, when it comes down to certain churches that don't reveal their finances, it's because they're jacked up. The accountability is terrible. And if you ask simple questions, it might take 2 weeks to get an answer.
This is true. Y'all, this is a good conversation right here. I hope y'all are
I'm talking about.
Sharing what my mom's talking. Mom was talking about how we took care of each other in our community. So we had gardens, and we had pigs and chickens and all that kind of stuff. Yeah.
The hog head.
Can we? No. We only have a few minutes. No, we're not doing.
Y'all remember I need to tell y'all the hog head story.
We're not doing this. Okay. We're not doing this.
All
right. Thank you. James. Thank you, Reverend Marcus. Yeah, he be sneaking wearing that collar. Yes. Let me tell you too about like church. James made a point too that people think that because we're not in the building, some people, now many people have gone back in their buildings, but James is at an AME church as well. We're not in the building, and because we're not in the building, but you're still saying we're going to be open for you to come and give your money, this gives the perception to some that, again, the only thing that the church wants is money. That's the only thing you want. You want is money. And that's the furthest thing from the truth, because the building is still there. Just simply because the building is still there, that means that there are still expenses associated with that building. So, unless during this pandemic, you want to be like the many churches and organizations who've had to close their doors permanently, this is why you still have to drive by the church if you don't have a mobile giving situation and give your money. The bank at this stage in the game and the utility companies and the water companies are not saying because we are in COVID, you don't have to pay us at all. You still have to pay. Our bills, just like in our homes, the bills didn't just go away. And most churches are having to pay those expenses. There are some things that we don't have to pay for, but most churches are still paying those expenses while also paying the cost to be able to increase their proficiency with their technology software so that they can continue to get the word out to the masses. Because this is what happened. In March, we're like, oh my gosh, we're shut down. So, okay, let's just go ahead and let's just get this. Let's just get this for online. Let's just get this. And we just We just put things in place. ABC 1, 2, 3. We didn't think about it. We didn't have all these gazillion meetings. We couldn't meet with the deacons, the stewards, the trustees. You just had to do what you had to do. But you were putting something in place that was a temporary, a very temporary solution. So you may have bought the cheapest microphones, the cheapest online giving platform, or participated in that. You may have just bought what you needed to buy
For 6
to
months.
get you from March, from March to July or whatever, 3 to 6 months. Now that we are going into December and all the numbers are going back up, I'm like, and now I'm speaking from a pastor standpoint, we need more microphones.
We need quality.
We need quality microphones because now we're going to be doing this for a long time because the microphones just kind of sat for a period of time while people were trying to figure out what we're going to do. We need more microphones. We need a better way. Everybody's not on Facebook. So what about my seniors who can look at their phone, and if I send them a link on YouTube, they can pull it up, or if they go to the church website, now we're streaming to the church's website. But if all I got is Facebook and my 79-year-old church member's like, I don't want to get on Facebook, but I'm going to send you my tithe check every month, and I need you to figure out how I can still watch the church service. Right. Or are you going to call me and have me on speakerphone so I can hear it? We got to do something. And so, yeah, you still have to give because now we need to come up with more innovative ways to continue to serve the people because we're going to be here for a little while.
And there's a learning curve associated with this whole technology. I mean, the reality, it's a learning curve and it's a cost. So, as you just clearly stated, what happens is that the cost to maintain technology is a very real cost. When you were going in the building, you don't have to maintain technology the way you have to do it when you're not in the building. So,
because for 3 months or 6 months, you're like, well, I got an iPad. We could just use my iPad. Right. Or we could just hold up my phone. But let me tell you, once you start easing into 9 months, I'm getting sick and tired of holding this phone up to go Facebook Live. We in month number 9 now.
Or your stuff starts to slow down.
Now my phone or my computer. You trying to throw shade? Because your computer.
Yes, I am. Yes,
he's talking about now your personal computer slowing down. Oh my gosh.
The one we're on.
Oh my gosh.
So
we were glad we were able to get on tonight.
That's why we were 6 minutes late.
We ain't got no prayer.
Have no idea the struggle. But this is a very necessary conversation.
The struggle is real.
It's a very necessary conversation, and we appreciate you participating in that conversation. And we can't be afraid to have it. And
y'all, it's just life, y'all.
It's life.
We can't take stuff so serious. You got to do what you have to do and keep moving. At the end of the day, we can't take none of this with us.
You can't take it with you, but the reality is we got to think bigger. And we got to get to the point where we think past ourselves. Because
amen.
See, the thing, and I guess that's the thing. You got to think past yourself. Amen. Let's just say the church is wrong in all its ways. What do you do with your children? Because either they go to church or they go. So you either participate in the solution or you are a part of the problem. Yeah. And so, the thing about this whole COVID thing, it's revealed everything being black and white. All that gray area that we had, that gray area is slimming down really, really quickly. So if God says X and you say something else, now who's God?
Hey.
Got a choice to make.
That's right.
That's where we are.
Yeah.
We have a choice to make. And so it's not an easy choice all the time because we still have desires. We still want to do what we want to do. And so, because it's like that, that's what it is.
The tithes and the offering. Derek was on.
My dude, Pastor Derek Kenlow. He says, I think Marcus was so on to something when he talked about the difference in just giving tithe and also offering.
Most people never make it to the offering.
Right.
Because we never tithe. And I can't give an offering until I first done the tithe.
And it's crazy because, I I probably the last 15 years or so, I understood offering. I mean, because I thought, okay, I'm good. I gave my tithe, right? I learned in '95 about tithing, and I didn't stop. Okay, but with good teaching, being under good leadership, you start to learn that okay, that's really like the base. That's like the cover charge in the kingdom. So it's like if that's where we start. Now I got something to aspire to, and so I think we've got to get to the point where those of us who are in the faith, who've been in the faith a while, we have to make ourselves accountable, but at the same time, we have to make those people in the faith who may be new, who may not be so new, we have to make them accountable as well. That's what brothers do. That's what sisters do. I don't have to agree with you, but the reality is there is a right and there's a wrong. And if you're wrong and I don't tell you, I cease to be your brother or your sister.
I think Tammy is saying that New York shut down as well. James is saying the church or the boom boom room.
Yeah.
That's what you were saying. The church or what? The church or the boom boom room. Yeah, people, places, things are starting to shut down again. We got to keep praying for the Midwest.
Wow, it's interesting.
And I guess New York and all the other places, because we're trying to progress. And what we're doing, and we seem like we're not. And what we're doing is we think, oh, well, we know the virus now. This thing's only been around for a couple of months, but we know it well enough to know that we can start back gathering. All we have to do is A, B, C, and X, Y, Z. And all we have to do is just take everybody's temperature when they come in the room. Y'all, I'm just saying be safe. Because so many people don't have a temp. So we have to be safe. But we have to realize that the giving, especially during this month, like people are experiencing so much hurt, so much pain. And we're still being wasteful. We have to trim the fat. We have to still give and teach. I think when you were talking about teaching our children to give during this season, if you've never done anything with them, your children, grandchildren during the holidays, on why it's important for them to give to somebody else or do something else, try that. Try that this year. This is a good year to teach about giving and helping somebody else.
Because God's given us the opportunity to spend more time with family. So what do we do with it, right?
Yeah. And be cheerful about it. I wanted to say this, and this is when you were talking, this thought just jumped through my brain. And as I always say, I've shared this. If you've heard me talk anything about money or giving, I always share this. And that I love to tithe. Since I've known about tithing most of my life from a kid. I was a kid who knew about Mama's Own. She can testify and tell you. She told us if we got $1, we had to give a dime. So I've been a tither all my life. And I was the person who, as I got older, I thought, wait a minute. So I'm gonna give 10% to God, 10% to the kingdom. So I started giving. I'm gonna put it in the rapper's term because I used to think I was a rapper. I started sowing where I was going, if you will. Just want to say it like that. So let's say I only made $2,500 a month. So you do the math. The whole month, I only made $2,500. Let's say in a month, or let's say I only made $1,000 a month, as opposed to me giving $100. That's right? I'm just messing with you. As opposed to me giving $100, what I would do.
Warrentonian.
Stop. What I would do. I'm serious, y'all. What I would do is I would give $150. And I'm not saying this to brag. I would give $150 because I believe that if I gave $150, that at some point I was trying to tithe to where I wanted my tithe to be. And you know what happened? Then I started making that $1,500 in the month. And then I was like, oh, I'm going to start giving a tithe of $200 a month. And then what happened? I mean, it'll be so random. And I'm not talking about a one-time change. My income would increase to $200, to $2,000. And then I would increase my tithe. I didn't increase my tithe once I got an increase in pay. I increase my tithe first, and then the pay follow. I'm telling y'all, I grew up. Somebody was talking about faith earlier. You can't beat God given. We used to sing that song. No matter how hard you try, you cannot. You cannot try not to sing the song. I love that song. I'm telling you. Yeah. And but it excited me. And I wasn't giving because I was saying, oh, God, I want to go to the next level. Take me to the next level. I was giving because, I was like, wow, this is a wonderful faith move. Like, this is just so amazing to get to see. The more I give to God, the more God gives to me.
So that's what a cheerful giver looks
that's
like.
What I'm happy. Let me tell you. But cash out me right now. I will show you. I will cash out Mt.Olive on here. Like, I'm telling you, I get the money, and I'm like, I don't even want to hold it. And I feel bad if don't let me forget. Don't let me forget anything. I'm like, okay, I have to get this money off of me. I have to get it off.
What's interesting, and Pastor Kendall said, the tithe is out of obedience, and the offering is out of appreciation. And it's interesting. You came up in a situation like that. The church I came up in, we didn't even discuss tithing.
I understand.
And so that's why I was saying there was an education gap. I didn't get it till I was in college, but literally we had everything from gleaners where you put little quarters and dimes and nickels, they raise money, all kind of little fundraisers. But we weren't taught that, okay, this is really the system of the kingdom. Just like the system of the world is Social Security, right? The system of the kingdom is tithing.
And what, okay, the system of the kingdom is tithing. But I want to go back to what you said earlier. This is for the person or the people who are watching. This is for the Christian who's watching and you're like, I'm struggling and I'm trying to do this and I'm trying to pay and I can't make ends meet. I don't understand why this is happening to me, but I give. And you look at the world and you look at somebody who you say they don't know Jesus. They don't even love God. I love God. I do all this. I do all that. But the thing is, that person is giving. That person is giving. We started talking about those universal principles earlier. That person is giving, and you keep seeing like, man, they keep getting blessed over and over and over again, but they're evil, they're this, they don't do this, they don't, but they're giving. It's a universal principle. You put the seed in the ground, you're going to reap something. You're going to reap a harvest. And what we do for so long, poverty is a mentality, and the African American church is plagued by this poverty mentality, and we just think we gotta hold on to it. I gotta hold it. I can't let it go. I only have $100. I can't let it go.
And there's a reason for that too.
I know there's another lie, but with our hands closed like this, holding on to what we got, we can't receive nothing else. We gotta open it up so that we can receive. But we are so afraid. We're so afraid. And so if you're watching tonight and you're just like, I can't do it. I don't care how much you're talking about it. I can't do it. I just want to encourage you to try. I mean, if God has blessed you, if God has given you something, and this is a thing that gets me. When I know people have mobile platforms to give, and you can talk about, oh, I've been blessed during the pandemic. I've gotten so much stuff during the pandemic. God has blessed me. I got increase on top of increase, business on top of business. But you don't give. You can't give anything to the kingdom, to the system that you say you love. You can't give anything to that. That's, I think, where the problem comes in. That's where the problem comes in. But for those of you who are watching and you're like, I can't do it, I want you to step out and try. If God has blessed you with something, then it's your time to walk in your season and bless God with something else and watch God do something miraculous in your life.
Absolutely. Well, y'all, it's 10:05.
Oh, the law. Oh, who is this?
So this
that's Javertis.
Yeah.
I know. He is the official faith healing finance scribe when you get on. Yeah. Okay, well, you want to read a couple more comments? So, y'all, thank you for your comments. I'm going to let Marcus close it out. So thank you so much.
So Pastor Derek says, with all the offerings from the word, they actually gave up to 30 to 40% of their income. You're right. Especially it references that in the book of Acts when the church was early starting. And it's interesting because, there is 4 pastors? I think I've counted 4 or 5 pastors.
Pastors on this live tonight.
Which I think is great because, it's rare that you see pastors supporting other pastors.
Thank you.
Unless it's a situation. And, I've been a church musician 35 years, so I've seen a lot of stuff. And so being married to a pastor and just seeing what happens on on the other side of the desk, a lot of times, I recognize that there's an education gap in the leadership. And so the fact that you guys and ladies take the time to participate in a conversation like this is huge. So we don't take that for granted. Pastor Javertis says, the law works regardless of faith. Sowing and reaping, giving and receiving are both laws that work for the just and the unjust. And I think with that, I think that we may have to discuss this a little bit more in maybe another week or so. And maybe have some of these pastors on.
Sounds great to me. You know,
Yes.
as long as we can keep our technology going, we're good. I want to. We're gonna figure it out. It's good. Thank y'all for tuning in tonight.
Thank you for your patience.
For those who are in the church and those who are pastors especially and leaders in your church, you know, just a couple of things. And I said I was giving you the closing word, but I think if we focus more on keeping our people engaged and focus on communicating a compelling vision even during this dismal time and operate in just more transparency and showing people being transparent about the given data, I think it's okay to say, you know what, only 10% of the people in our congregation tithe, because that's really what it is, or 20%, whatever. I think when we begin to do more of that, then that people will, even during this pandemic, feel more comfortable doing. So we'll start doing some of that too.
That's what it is.
All right, y'all.
Ladies and much.
Thank you.
Have an amazing night.